So I'd like to share with you just a few, maybe 4 third-side practical tools that I've found very useful for changing the game from confrontation to cooperation. And the very first one, actually interestingly, is the single biggest barrier to us accomplishing what we want in a negotiation is actually not, as we often think it is, the other side. It's ourselves. It's in our own human tendency, all very natural tendency, to react, to act without thinking. As Ambrose Bierce once put it, when angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. We lose it, and it's very natural, particularly because the issues are tough, the emotions are high, and to me, the key ability, the foundation third side ability, and the foundation negotiation ability is in the ability to step back for a moment, find a place of calm and perspective where you can see the big picture. Just listen, be patient. You have to wait until the right time. And one of the greatest powers that we have is the power not to react. The power not to react. And that's what balcony is. It's about focusing on what's truly important. So that's the first skill, having that focusing and having that big picture perspective. That's key. The second, which was also I tried to use in that incident, which is simply the ability to listen. I mean, it may seem very simple and obvious, but most people associate negotiation with talking. And we talk, and we call them talks, and that's what newspapers call them. But to me, negotiation is much more about listening than it's about talking. Because the key skill that you need is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other. It's about listening, and it's about respect. Those listening and respect are probably the cheapest concessions you can make in a negotiation. They cost you nothing, but they mean everything to the other side. To me, key thing is respect. Number one lesson of dealing in a hostage situation is what? Be polite. So a third tool is one of the greatest powers that we have is the ability to reframe. If we want to change the game, in other words, change the game from confrontation and cooperation, we need to learn how to change the frame, the way in which we see it. We think of negotiation as talking, but negotiation is more about listening, but when you do talk, it's about asking questions. Asking problem-solving questions that move the spotlight from positions to interests. Please help me understand your interests. Asking, focusing on the underlying interests behind the positions, looking for creative options. And then the fourth tool I'll mention is once you've done that, is the tool what I call it the golden bridge. What often happens in difficult conflicts is we think when we've got an idea, we tend to push. We tend to push the other side. We tend to try and just put pressure. And of course, the more pressure you put on someone, what do they instinctively do? They resist. So unless you're much more powerful than them, you're in a standoff. What you find successful negotiators do is they attract. Instead of making it harder for the other side, they try to make it easier for the other side to make the decision that they would like them to make. How do we meet those two interests? How do we reconcile those two interests? Normal negotiating process of positions, which is instead of, each time you hold on to your position and no one wants to be weak and give in and make that first concession, instead of having to, make politically painful concessions all the way through, they only had to make one decision at the end. Not when you don't know, if it's a slippery slope, you don't know where it's going to end up, but only at the end when you could see exactly what you're going to get in return. The wonderful thing about using a single text, because if you have an environmental group and a national group and a federal authority and everyone's got their own positions. If you've got a dozen positions, it's really difficult to move. But if the virtue of having a single text that is non-official, that is simply an idea that continually gets circulated among multiple parties, where everyone can mark it up, everyone can tell you what's wrong with it, and you have, drafters who are continually improving that text over time. It allows much wider participation, and no one has to agree to anything until they can actually see at the end whether their interests are truly being met in the document. And that's a way of building a golden bridge, of involving. So those are just 4 techniques, four third-side negotiating techniques to think about. The balcony, which is perspective taking, listening and respect, which is often empathy too, reframing, the power of reframing, and the power of bridging. And I would say that the third side, in a sense, what it does is it allows people to find common ground. Thank you very much.